Okay.
And good morning and good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to a webinar on streamlining the DMF process, hosted by EAS Consulting Group and presented by EAS independent consultant, Priya Jambhekar. EAS, a member of the Certified Family of Companies, is a leader in regulatory solutions for industries regulated by FDA. Our global network of over 150 independent advisors and consultants enables EAS to provide comprehensive consulting, training, and auditing services, ensuring proactive regulatory compliance. From regulatory strategy development, compliance assistance, preparation of technical submissions such as DMFs, 510Ks, ANDAs, as well as offering support for receipt of FDA Form 483 and warning letter remediation, EAS offers the detailed knowledge and experience your company requires to ensure accurate and timely assistance. Today's presenter is EAS independent consultant, Priya Jambhekar. Priya works with clients to establish global regulatory strategies and operational excellence during all phases of pre- and post-approval phases of new and generic drugs with RX, RX to OTC switch, and OTC designations, including small and large molecule candidates, and human and veterinary drugs. She has extensive experience in the handling of controlled substances, DEA and PDMA registrations, DMF preparations, post-market safety, and healthcare compliance. Priya is a frequently invited speaker and writes extensively on DMF preparations and more. As a reminder, during the webinar, you may ask any questions by typing them into the questions box. And with that, I'll say thank you again for joining EAS, and I'll turn the presentation over to Priya.
Thank you, Amy. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you well.
Oh, great. Thank you all for joining, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. In this 1 hour presentation, we will cover the overview of the U.S. Drug Master File process, what regulations are covered by the DMF, what you need to do if you're filing a DMF, and at the end we also have the key references for you. So let's first talk about the commonly used terminologies for the Drug Master File. Then we'll talk about what are the legal basis for submitting a Drug Master File in US, and what are the different kinds of Drug Master Files that are submitted, accepted, or made obsolete in US for both drugs and biologics. We'll cover that. And if you are filing a Drug Master File, regardless of the type of a Drug Master File, what is the basic content that will go in your Drug Master File? And again, we'll talk about the paper Drug Master Files versus the electronic submission of the Drug Master Files. And if you're one of those companies who are required to submit an electronic Drug Master File, are you eligible to get a waiver should you require that? And if you are submitting an electronic Drug Master File, let's talk about the basic content and organization of the file so that once you submit, it will be found acceptable by the FDA. If you are in the process of converting your paper Drug Master Files to the electronic Drug Master Files, we'll talk about how you do that. We'll also touch base on, once you submit a Drug Master File, what does FDA do to the Drug Master File? And once you have successfully submitted a Drug Master File, what you tend to do to keep that Drug Master File current. And also, we are providing you with some of the templates for your commonly made submissions. And then there are several resources at the end of the presentation that you might find useful. So let's first talk about the terminologies that we would use in the DMF activities. Usually when somebody says a holder of the DMF, that means it's the company or a person who actually is a sponsor of the DMF. When you hear the terms as agent or representative, these are the people who are responsible to communicate with the agency on behalf of the holder. If you're a US company, you can choose to use an agent or representative. But if you are an OUS company that is established outside of the United States and you don't have a US office, you must have an agent or a representative. your agent can submit and sign your submissions. However, there are certain exceptions. Once your agent is appointed, agent cannot sign his or her own letter of appointment, has to be signed by the holder. If there are specific commitments that are made by the company, those letters cannot be signed by the agent, as well as if your company name is changing, or if you are transferring the DMF to another company, the agent cannot close those letters, or agent nor can the agent close the DMF on your behalf. So, but the routine correspondence, any your annual report submissions, you're adding any letters of authorization, any other correspondence, the agent can sign for you and submit that correspondence. Now, who is the applicant or customer or authorized party? This term is usually used in reference of the company that is going to be using your DMF in their submission. Usually, the submissions relate to the applications such as IND applications, or the new drug applications, or the abbreviated new drug applications, biologics license applications, etc. Any applications that are submitted to the FDA that will require the data for FDA review, and that is going to be submitted by reference to a third-party submission. Those documents are called submissions to the FDA or the applications. What's a right of reference? You might hear this term more often, and it gets also sometimes get confused with the term letter of authorization. But the right of reference is the letter that is submitted by the holder of the drug master file to the FDA, informing the FDA that this particular DMF is going to be accessed by an applicant. Letter of authorization is the letter that the applicant is going to submit in their application, such as INDs or the NDAs, informing the FDA that certain part of the information that FDA would need to review their application is going to be provided by the third-party submission, i.e. DMF, and that they actually have the right to inform the FDA that FDA can review their application in reference to the application submitted by the applicant. If you have submitted the FDA, or if you've ever gone searching for the FDA site, you will find FDA has a database that lists every single drug master file that was submitted to the FDA. And this drug master file is updated on a quarterly basis. And if you have looked at this list, you might find at the end of this Excel file, letters such as A, I. So what is that letter I means? That means your drug master file is active. That means you have kept it current, you have submitted all the reports as they're required, and it's open to reference by anybody that you are authorizing it to be referenced to. Inactive drug master file means you still have a drug master file that you have failed to update, i.e. the minimum requirement for your drug master file to remain active is that you submit your annual reports, and that this drug master file has not been kept current by submission of the annual reports. So you can activate the drug master file by submitting the annual reports. Next thing is a closed drug master file. That means you have decided that you don't need this drug master file anymore, or you have neglected this drug master file by not submitting the reports for 3 years to the FDA. So the FDA can inactivate that and close your annual drug master file, or you can withdraw it and close your drug master file. Should the drug master file be closed, and if you do need that drug master file again, you do have to resubmit the drug master file. In US, drug master files are completely voluntary and are not required by the law. However, if you were to submit a drug master file, there are certain regulations that you need to follow, and these regulations for the drug products are defined in 21 CFR section 314.420. And what this CFR says is that, yes, you can submit the drug master file if you do not want to provide the information to the applicant. However, if you want to submit it, there are certain regulations and rules that you need to follow. and that FDA will not really review the drug master file unless it has been referenced by somebody. And they're in their application, and they're asking the FDA to review their application and letting the FDA know that here is the additional information provided to you as a third-party submission. And note that if that is the case, your drug master file also needs to include the name of the person that you're authorizing this drug master file to. Remember the definition that we saw for the right of reference. And again, if you do want to have the drug master file and allow people to refer to it, you do need to keep it current. In the FDA database, it needs to have the letter A next to it. And if you have a drug master file, please check that database and make sure that there are no errors. Even biologics that are governed by the Public Health Service Act, as defined and are codified in 21 CFR section 30151 regarding the master files, also allow submission of the master files. FDA has taken steps to ensure that the processes for the drug master file and the biologics master file are as similar as possible. However, there are some differences between the two, and we'll touch base on that. And again, whether it's a drug master file or it's a device master file, information is kept confident. The difference is there is no listing of the biologics drug master file and the FDA site until your application is approved. So nobody really knows if there's any master file for any biologic that has been submitted, unlike the drug product where you can find the listing in the FDA's database. As we said, there are multiple types of drug master files. There are 5 different kinds of drug master files. Type 1 drug master file was intended for submission of the manufacturing and facilities information to the FDA. As of 2000, this master file is not accepted by the FDA. The remaining types of master files, type 2 to type 5, are still accepted by the agency. However, in 2000, when the type 1 master file was made obsolete, FDA did not change the types of other drug master files. So right now in US, you can only file the type 2, 3, 4, or 5 drug master file. So and each of this master file has a specific reason for its filing. So what's a type 2 drug master file? It's a drug master file for the drug substance, or its intermediates of the drug substance, or any other materials that are used in the preparation of a drug substance or a drug product. It's not used for any other reasons. For biologics as well, you can submit a type 2 drug master file. However, the difference is if you have a biologic, FDA expects, recommends, and suggests that the holder of the application, the BLA application or the IND application, have the full knowledge of the third-party submission, and FDA will request that the certain information for a biologic product be directly submitted in your application and not be included as part of solely as your drug master file. Type 3 drug master files are used for packaging materials, such as your bottles, caps, syringes, etc. Type 4 drug master files are used for any other excipients, colorants, flavors, any other essences, or any other materials used in the preparation of these substances. And type 5 drug master file is usually, it's anything that does not fit within type 1 to type 4 drug master files, but you do have certain information that you want to submit to the FDA in confidence. Sometimes selectively, some of the information for a BLA that you do not want to provide it to the applicant, you may be able to submit that through a type 5 drug master file. But for a type 5 drug master file, you should always obtain FDA agreement and before you submit the information via this mode. So what are the requirements for a drug master file? What goes in? Again, like every other FDA submission, all the information must be in English. If you have a company that produces your records in a non-English language, every single word of that record must be translated. Now, regardless of the type of drug master file, whether 2 to 5, you must have a transmitter letter submitted to the FDA. Then there's selective administrative information that is submitted in every drug master file, such as you need to provide the name and address of who the holder of the drug master file is. If you have more than one facility, if you have a separate corporate address, make sure that that information is provided. If you're submitting a drug master file for 2, 3, 4 types, then make sure that your manufacturing processing facility information and address is provided to the FDA. If the addresses are same, you can just say same address as the address of the holder. You need to provide a contact information for who is going to be communicating with the agency. Such information should include your name, your address, phone number, fax number, and your email. And if you have specific restrictions to those hours, please ensure that that information is provided to the FDA as well, so that they can do their best to contact you in the time that you are available. If you're an OUS company, you must have an agent, as I said previously. And the information about the agent must also be included as part of your application. And again, if you are holder of several drug master files with the agency, you can choose to have an agent that is specific to each application. There is no requirement to have only one agent to represent all your products. Anybody who is included in your applications or contact, you need to provide a specific responsibility of the person who is going to be the contact for your application. Since 91, every DMF that has been submitted also must have a debarment statement that you or any of the vendors that you may be using are not using services of a debarred person. You need to provide a statement of commitment with every submission that goes in the drug master file. This is a letter of commitment that is going to inform the FDA that your DMF is current and you intend to comply with your drug master file. If you are aware at the time of submission of your drug master file, who is going to be referencing your drug master file, please include that information. If you don't have that information at the time of submission of your drug master file, that information is not required. Now, what goes in each type of drug master file? Again, the drug master file for the type 2, as we said before, is limited to the drug substance or the drug product. In addition to the administrative information that we touched base on, for your type 2 drug master file, you're going to summarize all of your manufacturing information, all the significant steps of your manufacturing, your processing, your specifications, your stability data, and your environmental assessment. Here are the guidelines that you may find useful when you're pulling together your drug master file for your drug substances or drug products. And again, we are going to go in some of the content details when we talk about the organization of the drug master file. Type 2 drug master file for the drug product. Again, the similar information into the manufacturing procedures and controls for the finished dosage form. And again, you will need environmental assessment statement and your stability data as well. Here are the guidelines that you may find useful when you're preparing a drug master file for a drug product. And we'll talk about the details when we talk about the content organization. Type 3 drug master file is limited to the packaging components. You can have one DMF for your container closure systems, or you can choose to have a separate DMF for your container and the closure. Again, you need to have a manufacturing information that details the manufacturing of your packaging components. You need to have names of all the suppliers, fabricators, anyone else that you might be using in getting your raw materials when you're producing your packaging components or your films or your SDP, LDP material, and what their purpose is, and to ensure that the specifications that you provide address accepting of those materials as well. Again, like any other DMF, it has stability data in your drug master file as well as your environmental assessments. In the guidelines are provided here to give you greater information if you are thinking of preparing a type 3 drug master file. But interesting to note that if you are supplying a container closure, any other packaging components that are covered by a drug master file to an applicant, it is not your responsibility as a drug master file holder to ensure that the applicant's product is compatible with your container closure system, or it is safe for the applicant to use your container closure system for their product. It is their responsibility. So the type 4 drug master files are again limited to any of the additives, colorants, essences, excipients that are used in manufacturing of your that you manufacture that might be used in the preparation of the drug products. If you have the flavors and there are multiple components, you need a quantitative breakdown of each of the component or the mixture. You need to provide the safety information, the toxicological data on these materials. I have provided you with the CFR references that give you details of the type of data you would need to provide the safety of your product from the toxicology perspective. If you have submitted the same tox data, you have multiple drug master files, you can simply refer to that other drug master file to reference to the toxicology data that was produced and that is still applicable. And every drug master file again requires stability data so that you can have a use period for your product, as well as the environmental assessment to either demonstrate that it's safe to the environment and you can request a categorical exclusion, or you provide the safety data to support the environmental assessment of the product. If you have a novel excipient, generally the type of information that you require is about the same as the information you would require for a type 2 drug master file. Type 5 drug master files, as stated earlier, are for any other information that is not covered in type 2 to type 4 drug master files. Make sure that FDA is in agreement that the type of information that you are going to provide is going to be accepted as a type 5 drug master file, and that you will submit a letter of intent, LOI, to the drug master file staff and get that agreement before you're submitting a type 5 drug master file. You can also submit a non-clinical evaluation of the excipients, whose CMC information is going to be either in type 3 DMF, in type 4 DMF, or the module 3 of your application, but there's some specific tox data or the clinical data that is confidential to you. You can submit that information via type 5 DMF. If you're a facility such as in a lyophilization facility or specialty manufacturing facility, where you want to provide the information and you are a contract manufacturer that is manufacturing the product for several companies, you can request the FDA that information about your manufacturing facility, your processes, procedures could be submitted to the FDA as a part of the type 5 drug master file. And again, the content would depend upon the type of the drug master file you're submitting as a type 5 drug master file. Now moving to the electronic submissions, FDA encourages that electronic submissions be made for all the drug master files because it makes the review process easier on the agency's part. If you have submitted the paper submissions, the old paper submission process was cumbersome. The submissions went to the central document room and the reviewer had to request this information, took 1 to 3 days for the FDA to send the information, came in heaps of binders depending upon how old the information was, so on and so forth. So electronic submission makes it easier. However, it's not mandatory for all types of submissions. At the moment, if you have a type 2 drug master file that's going to support a commercial product, you are required to have an electronic submission. As of May 5, 2018, FDA will not accept any paper submissions for a type 2 drug master files unless you had submitted a waiver and that was accepted by the agency. If you are a type 3 drug master file, your date is coming. It's going to be effective on the 5th of May, 2020 this year. And again, between now and then, if you want to submit just the PDFs and not the e-submissions. FDA would prefer that. You can elect to submit the PDFs and via CD-ROMs as opposed to submitting a paper file. But if you're a type 3 drug master file, your paper file is accepted as until after 4th of May. When can you get the waivers? Again, you can get a long-term waiver, which is a waiver for 5 years. And within 4.5 years of waiver, if you need to continue with that waiver, you need to apply again. Or you can get this short 6 months waiver. So let's cover both of those. So what's a long-term waiver? So if you have a type 2 DMF that only supports the PET products, those are positive emission tomography products for drugs, you can request a waiver from submitting a type 2 drug master file. Again, if you are a DMF holder, that is a non-commercial entity, you can request a waiver as well. And if you have a radio label product for a PET product, you can also you can request for a waiver. What are the short-term waivers for? Short-term waivers, as I said earlier, are only 6-month waivers. Those are the waivers for anybody, everybody who cannot comply with the FDA's electronic submissions requirements from the dates given by the agency. And FDA will grant those waivers only in extraordinary circumstances. And some of the examples are, you've been hit by a natural disaster, and that's impacted severely your computer operation. You had some unplanned internet disruptions as malware attacks, and your system is completely disabled. You're not planning to keep this application, much after your effective date. For example, if you were intending to submit close your drug master file in June of 2018, that was type 2. You could have very well asked for a waiver because you were not going to be in business with that DMF for very long and did not need to go through the exercise of converting, making your last submission as an electronic submission. Or you already have submitted a request to withdraw your drug master file, but you had not withdrawn that drug master file yet. You could still ask for a waiver from your next submission if there was some specific questions from the FDA and need to respond to the agency prior to that, after that May 5th, 2018 date. And the similar things would apply to a type 3 drug master file as well. If you are a holder of type 3 drug master file and you feel that you cannot comply by the coming May 5, 2020 date, please make sure that you submit your waivers as soon as possible, because it does take time at the agency to review these waivers and grant you a decision. Short-term waivers generally are not renewable. If you are submitting a waiver, where are you going to submit and how are you going to submit them? You are going to clearly label these waivers, these communications as waiver request, ECTD requirements. Please make sure that this is very prominent in your communication, bold capital types in a bigger font so that it's not mistaken for any other submission. As we covered it already, provide the basis for why you're requesting this type of a waiver. Do you want a short-term waiver because extraordinary circumstances exist? Or you want a long-term waiver because you're a PET product or you're a non-commercial entity? If you are a drug product and submitting a DMF waiver, reach out to the agency at esub@fda.hss.gov. And again, when you're ready, do double check these email addresses because they may change. If you're, again, CBER, submitting to CBER, you submit it to esub@cber.fda.gov. And FDA will review this request on case-by-case basis. What is the format of the drug master file submissions? Again, if you're submitting it electronically, it's the format that is for the common technical document. If you're familiar, if you submitted your IND applications electronically or the NDA or BLA application electronically, you would be very familiar with this type of submission. There are 5 modules. Module 1 is an administrative module, and every US submission regardless of type of your drug master file, requires an administrative module. Type 2 module is a summary module. The relevant information summaries would go in here. If you're submitting a CMC type of a drug master file, which most of them are, you would also require module 3 that will have details of the quality information. Your module 4 is the module for the non-clinical data. So some reason if you require toxicology data or the other non-clinical pharmacology data or any other data that is not part of your CMC information, i.e. because you are justifying your impurities, you are justifying your degradation products, you're justifying your colorants, your essences, your flavors, and you run your toxicology studies. That will go in your module 4 of your CTD. For in rare events, if you're submitting the clinical data, or if you are a BLA and you are submitting your clinical data to the agency by a third party, that information would go in module 5. Many cases, selected clinical data may also be part of your type 5 drug master file. When you're submitting an electronic drug master file, please request your DMF number via FDA portal, as opposed to when you were submitting your paper drug master files. You could have submitted that without a DMF number, and FDA would have assigned the DMF number once your application was received. FDA can take 3 to 5 working days to provide this number, so make sure that you are given enough time to get the number. There are specific procedures on how you request this number. So if you go on the FDA site, you can find the specific instructions on how you're going to request the number through the FDA portal. These numbers, again, remember, now have to be requested through the FDA portal and not via FDA emails, as was used to be the case. Then when you're submitting electronic document, you need to publish a ECTD. There's specific guidelines on how you assemble an electronic submission and how you publish an electronic submission. There are resources available on the FDA drug site. So FDA site, so take a look at those guidelines and ensure that your electronic submissions are going to be accepted by the FDA. If it's your first electronic submission, you can submit a test submission to the agency as well. So please contact the agency and to assess how you can submit a test submission and how long will it take for the agency to come back to you to ensure that you have enough time in your process to have your test submission completed and that you know what you're doing for your final submission. So what does go in the electronic submissions? As I said earlier, we will cover the content and details. As I said earlier, every submission type of DMF, whether 2, 3, 4, and 5, does require an administrative section. So the minimum required information is your cover letter, the list of authorized persons that if you're aware of at the time, or as soon as you may become aware of, and statement of commitment. This information would be submitted in your ECTD section 1.2 that's entitled as cover letter section. You also need to submit administrative information. As we said earlier, you need to provide a full contact information for the sponsor. Any changes to name, address, information on the contact information. This information is included in section 1.3, administrative information. Subsection 1.3.1 is where you would provide the contact information. In section 1.3.1.1, it's your corporate name, whether the section says change, but your initial information is also submitted exactly this is where. In your section 1.3.1.2, you will submit the information about the change of contact or change of agent. Again, initial information as goes in this section as well. It's reference a change of contact, but it's all the information regarding the contact. Then section 1.3.3 is a debarment certification. Note that if your application is lacking debarment certification, it will not be accepted by the agency. Section 1.4 is a reference section. You are going to put the right of reference letter. Remember, that is the letter that you are providing the FDA, informing them who you are given the LOA to. That information goes in 1.4.1. the company that is submitting your LOA in their application will submit that information in 1.4.2. And then in 1.4.3, you as a DMF holder will provide a name of each and every authorized party that you have provided authorization to reference the DMF. Again, if you have not, your name, that authorized party's name is not included in your DMF, FDA may not be able to review your DMF in reference to their application. If you choose to close the application, that notification is submitted in section 1.5, subsection 1.5.5. If you had any FDA meetings for your for any topics, issues related to your drug master file, FDA communications are included in section 1.6. Once you have submitted your drug master file, any additional information that you might submit to your drug master file will be submitted in section 1.11 information amendment. Note that you can submit multiple types of amendments as one submission. You don't have to make multiple amendments for each submission. Any other communication will go in your section 1.12, and the minimum required information in that section is your subsection 1.12.14, environmental assessment. If you don't have environmental assessment in your application, it will not be accepted. Your section 1.14 is your labeling section, and in your DMF, typically you will have a shipping label submitted. Unless you have a DMF for type 5 DMF that has information that is not part of standard 2, 3, and 4 drug master files, you may have different types of labels included. 1.16 is a risk evaluation mitigation section. Your REM strategy for your product will be included in this particular section. Again, remember, every type of DMF will require this administrative section, and this is the type of information that will be included in your DMF. Now, if you are submitting a type 2, 3, 4 DMF that specifically refers to a CMC type of information, which normally it does, you will have a summary section. That summary section is section 2.3, overall summary of quality. Overall summary of quality should include, information on the drug substance, if your DMF refers to a drug substance, or a drug product if your information refers to a drug product, or both if your information is for drug substance and a drug product. Again, typical information that is included in your type 2 drug substance, if you need to provide the information, in section 2.3 for drug substance, it applies to the type 2 drug master files for drug substances, but you can also apply to a type 3 DMF for single package type, or applies to a type 4 DMF for single entity or novel excipients. And again, if you are submitting any of these applications, then you need to provide the summary sections 23S1 to 23S7. Later on in the application, we'll go in the detail. In this presentation, we'll go in little more details about what's included in each of these sections. If you are having a DMF for a drug product, it again applies to your type for your drug product as well as any of the container closure closed assembly systems. You do require 2.3p section. Also, if you're having a type 4 drug master file for mixtures, such as flavors or mixtures, you do need to include that information in the 2.3p drug product section. If your drug master file requires section 2.3.p, applicable sections for your drug master files are 2.3.p.1 to 2.3.p.8, and we'll cover what goes in all of these sections. Again, what does go in the drug substance type 2 drug master file, or the drug master files for type 3 and type 4 components for single components, where you require the section 2.3s. Your 2.3s1 is your general information, such as your nomenclature, structure, characterization. 2.3s2 is your manufacturer information. your manufacturer, name and address of manufacturer, manufacturing process, your characterization of your manufacturing, specific manufacturing process, your critical process parameters, etc. Your 2.3.S.3 is your characterization of your drug substance or intermediates, where you are going to identify your structures, identify impurities, identify degradation products, identify your controls, your residual solvents, etc. In 2.3.S.4, you'll include the information that's related to the drug substance control, such as specifications or methods. 2.3.S.5 is any information about the reference standards. And 2.3.S.6 is the information in which you're storing your material. And then again, S7 is your stability information. That's your stability protocol, stability data, your assessment of your use by date for your drug substance, or expiration dating for a biologic. If you are doing a 2.3.P drug master file, information is similar. In 2.3.P1, you have your description and composition of the product. And then in 2.3.P2, you have your drug development, any information about your pharmaceutical development. And this is the only difference between a drug 2.3.S and 2.3.P sections of the drug master file, if you're required. If you have a 2.3.S sections required for your drug master file, you don't require a document called pharmaceutical development, which you require. And that's I think what makes the changes to the numbering scheme. Otherwise, your your summary sections for your 2.3.P, there's no difference between your sections 2.3.S and 2.3.P. Because of the pharmaceutical development requirement, your 2.3.P2 sections, there is an additional section on your drug product side, but otherwise your 2.3.P3 is similar to your 2.3.S2. You provide all the manufacturing information. In 2.3.P4, you'll provide summary of your control of excipients because your drug product. In 2.3.P5, again, the controls, the specifications, the release methods, etc. will go in 2.3.P5. P6 is a reference standard section. P7 is the container closure system you'll be using for the drug product or anything else that qualifies for the 2.3.P section for your drug master file. And P8 is stability. Again, remember, this is summary section, so you're going to be providing summary of the information and not the great details that are reserved for the module 3 sections, which we are going to cover now. So the module 3, the section numbering, except instead of let me just take a step back. Let me tell you how the numbering system occurs for the specific modules of the drug substance and the drug product. The summary modules, the 2.3 appears prior to all the CMC sections because the third module in the summary sections. Your 2.1 is your table of content, 2.2 is overall introduction to your module 2, and 2.3 your CMC module. 2.4 is your non-clinical module, so on and so forth. That's why everything within the summary module section starts with module 2.3. Similarly, your module 3 is a CMC module, and 3.2 refers to the second section of this module. 3.1 is a table of content, and when you are having an electronic submission, you do not need a table of content for your submission. You just need, so any module 3 section for CMC will start with 3.2, indicating that it's a second section of the module 3. And again, the section numbers otherwise are identical. S1 is your general information, S2 is manufacturing, S3 is your characterization, so on and so forth. But this is the section where you will provide the great details and the actual documentation. For example, your specification sheet will go in here, not just the summary. Your actual stability data tables, all the information would go in this section, not the actual summary. Your batch records will go in this section, not the summary, so on. So the similar type of information for the drug product as well. It's the same exact second section in module 3, exact same sections as you're addressing in summary modules are addressed here, but you will have the actual documentation and details in this particular section. And the summary section summarizes this information that you have in module 3. So for example, the manufacturing batch record will go in your 32P3 section. Your actual control of excipients, your specifications, methods, your residual solvent statement, etc. will go in your P4 section. Your control of drug product will go in P5 section, your actual specifications. And your stability data, data tables, your express dating statement, etc. will go in your P8 section. Most DMFs are primarily CMC focused, as you can see, but you may have, DMFs for novel excipients, you may have any other degradation products or impurities that may need further qualification, as we talked about. That you may have some non-clinical data that you will put in module 4. If you have clinical data, that will go in module 5. Again, take a look at the detailed table of content for the ECTD applications, and the structure for the DMFs is no different than this table of content. If you have any specific questions about how to organize submissions, you can always reach out to us. If you are having a type 3 or 4 DMFs that are mixtures, and you are submitting a M3 for drug product, you do not need to submit pharmaceutical development section. However, do not change the nomenclature for any of the other sections that you are submitting. Again, remember, for your M3 structure, regardless whether they're type 2, 3, 4 DMF, the structure does not change. If you're having type 3 or 4 DMFs, you don't need to have a pharmaceutical development report because these DMFs are intended for packaging components or excipients. Now, if you have a paper submission and if you're type 2 submission, you might, and you still are in paper mode, you will have to convert to electronic submission when you do submit your next submission. If you are in the process, your DMF number does not change. Your electronic DMF number, if you are assigned a paper DMF number, will remain the same. Do not change it. You will keep the same DMF. You will not combine the DMS when you're simply going from paper to an electronic system. You need to have one DMF for one single substance. If you just provide one cover letter indicating that you're converting your submissions from paper to a DMF for all your drug master files, you can submit that as single correspondence. You can include that letter with your DMFs. You only need to provide the information that's most current. Again, as part of your drug master file, FDA recommends that you should provide a statement of GMP certification for the manufacturing site as a part of your electronic submissions. Any of the information that's obsolete, you do not need to resubmit again. Also, any of the information that was in your paper submissions does not have to be converted to electronic submission unless it was a new submission. You can choose to do that to make it convenient for you. You can take your drug master file, take all the most current information and create one consolidated uniform electronic drug master file. It might make it easier for your future correspondence, future references. But speaking from the regulatory basis, it is not a requirement of drug master file. And again, if you're submitting a drug master file that is specifically to submit that supports a abbreviated new drug application, as many of them do, about 75% of the drug master files are submitted to support a generic application. There is a detailed guidance given on the OGD side. Please take a look at that to make sure that you are compliant with that complete assessment type 2 drug master files under GDUFA so that your drug master file will be accepted by the agency. And if you're converting to electronic database, and if you are thinking that this would be a good time to do that, it would be a good idea to clean your application. Again, for the information, as you had the old information, your general information goes in 3.2S. Your manufacturing information will go in 3.2S2. Your stability information will go in 3.2S7. your reference time within 3 to S5. So the organization needs to check how it was organized. It's no longer section 1, 2, 3, and 4. You have to put that into the ECTD module. Once you file the DMF with the agency, you have, if FDA will take a look at the cursory assessment, just want to take a step and say, there are several templates given to you in your submission. I don't plan to provide that. Go through the templates. They're very clear in there on what is required. So they are given to you for your information in case if you're looking to provide the correspondence. So when you're filing a DMF, once your DMF is filed, you may need to make sure it's reviewed. A cursory review is conducted by the agency. And if that passes the muster, agency will file your DMF and you'll be notified. So if you're not heard anything back from the agency, please follow up using the email information given here to make sure that your information has been received by the FDA. You're going to trigger the mechanism I said earlier only when someone is going to be referencing to your DMF. And if there are any deficiency in DMF, they're only going to be triggered by the agency's review of somebody's application. Once that happens, you will, as a DMF holder, will be notified of those deficiencies. The applicant will simply be told that the DMF is deficient and the application can be approved until these deficiencies are addressed. It's up to you to notify the applicant as to your plan and what you need to do. Once your DMF is accepted, and you need to make additional submissions. Those are called amendments to the DMF. And what are these amendments? There are administrative amendments such as letters of authorization, any change in contact information, any withdrawal request, any DMF closure request. All of these are considered administrative amendments. Anytime there is a change, agencies should be notified. If there are any technical changes, i.e. changes in your manufacturing process, procedures, specifications, controls, any other things, those are considered technical amendments. They need to be made to the agency. And anytime there's a technical amendment, that is a significant change, you need to coordinate that change with the applicant to ensure that the applicant has had the opportunity to address the change and the application that refers to your drug master file remains in compliance, so does your drug master file when that change is adopted. You as a DMF holder, it's your obligation to make sure that your DMF is current and active, so it could be referenced by a third party. Any submission that you submit to the agency will include a date of submission, FDA address, your drug master file number, your DMF holder information, why are you corresponding with the agency, and what type of submission do you have, and who the contact for the agency is at the same time. Every submission needs to be signed as well. I will quickly cover one drug master template. So there are several templates that have been provided to you for any and every type of a submission for the FDA cover, such as I'll quickly walk you through them, and I'll go quickly through one template. This is the template if your original application is here. Any subsequent submissions that you want to do, here's a template you can use. If you're submitting LOA for the applicant, here's a template you can use. If you are providing the FDA right of reference, there's a template for that. If you are withdrawing an LOA, here's a template for that, because if you're not doing a business with a third party, you can withdraw their authorization as well. Template for agent appointment letter. Template for the annual cover letter is a template, and all the details of information. If you have internal company change, is a template for that. And any transfer of notification, then you need to do the template for that as well as the holder acceptance letter template. And all other limitations of each template are provided, as well as to when you should use and when you should not use the templates. Again, for every template, you need to have, why are you submitting this template? What is your name and address? Statement of commitment needs to go on every submission that you're submitting to the FDA. Again, please refer to the statement of commitment that we talked about earlier. And then you will say that who you are, what your DMF number is. You'll confirm with the agency that your DMF is current and that you're going to comply with the statements made in it. and that you're going to notify the FDA of any changes in the requirements and information. And then you are going to inform the FDA as to what that type of submission was via submitting the FDA and who you are. Again, here's a template for the DMF closure later. And we have the key resources for you as well. So here, not every single resource is here, but if you go through any of the resources that are provided here, you will be able to plan out a DMF, be able to file the DMF, be able to submit a DMF that meets the current standards and it's going to be acceptable. And again, here's the contact information for you for the FDA. If you have any DMF related questions, write email to the FDA DMF questions at fda.hss.gov. And like every other FDA email, please double check because emails may change. If you need to submit paper submission to the agency or a submission that is bigger than 10 gigabytes, here are addresses for the Cedar submission, goes to Beltsville office, and your CBER submissions go to Silver Spring offices. That was last of the slide. Amy?
Great, thank you, Priya. We do have a couple questions here, and let me get to them. Let's see, what makes an excipient a novel excipient?
It's the excipient that's not in the FDA's inactive ingredient database. It's not it's not a compendial excipient, or it's an excipient that has not been used in any other products that have been currently approved by the FDA. So the best place for you is to look at the IIG database and see if your excipient appears on that list or not.
Thank you. Next question. For an old paper DMF, can the annual update letter be submitted by mail, or does the letter need to go through ECTD even though the DMF itself is not electronic?
It depends on whether you are a type 2 DMF or whether type 3 or 4. If you're type 3 or 4 DMFs, you can still submit the communication by paper. If you're a type 2 DMF that does not qualify for a waiver, then your annual report letter needs to be submitted to the FDA via ECTD forum electronically.
Okay, thank you. Last question, is there any additional scrutiny by FDA in the case of a DMF that was closed due to lack of updates when it is reopened?
That's an interesting question. Would depend upon I would say no. It would depend upon how compliant your DMF is. So I would not say scrutiny from the aspect of you neglecting your DMF and filing, but I think as is the case with anything else, if you are reopening the DMF, make sure that it meets all the requirements of the most current DMF. The information is current, and you as a sponsor, it might not hurt to say that your intent is to maintain this DMF. And maybe you want to explain as to why the DMF that you closed previously due to neglect, would not, was a rare event.
Okay, great, thank you. And thank you everyone in the audience. It is right at 9 o'clock, so we are out of time. I want to thank Priya for her presentation today. And of course, everyone in the audience, if you have any questions or would like any assistance with DMF preparation, submissions, of course, contact EAS and we'll be glad to help. And thank you again for joining us. I hope everyone has a great day or a great evening. Thank you.
There was one last question about the DMF fees. If people are still on the line. Yeah, if you're submitting a drug master file that's supposed to generic application, there are DMF fees. Look at the FDA user fee size for GDUFA fees, and you will see that there is a fee for filing of the drug master file. If you're filing a DMF for non-generic product, there are no DMF fees for that product, for the DMFs.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And thanks, everyone. Have a great day.